How was your company dealing with insecure IoT devices, and how are you dealing with it now?
We were dealing with IoT mostly through third parties. We didn't know what most of those devices were. And so what we ended up doing was deploying a capability that allows us to see all of the devices within the environment continuously in a passive manner.
There's really a lack of governance around these types of devices, and recognizing that these devices, generally they're resource constrained and they're going to get their intelligence from some remote type of service. It's a lot of trust, but there should be a process to validate that trust.
Phil Wolf asks, what team competencies do CISOs need to cultivate next regarding devices?
These are computers. They're just different computers. What most security teams need are visibility into these things, visibility into what software components they're running, visibility into how they normally communicate versus what abnormal looks like.
I'm a big believer that it starts with governance to map out what your organization should be doing, how they're doing it, how they measure it. And then all these competencies sort of fall under this in some maturity model that's defined.
A lot of the attacks that are being executed against IoT and OT based operations are not always going to result in data exfiltration. We're seeing almost weekly events that are affecting operations relying entirely upon IoT and OT to deliver critical services.
If we look at, say, Google with their devices, you'd have to say, well, they've been scanning my email. What do they do with that information? What's the difference between using their email or their G Suite and then them having inputs audibly? It goes back to the same service, the same provider. It's a new context, but it's an old problem that maybe we haven't entirely gotten our arms around, or a lot of people and organizations haven't been willing. The positive things I'm seeing is there are real third-party services that say, hey, we'll specialize in understanding a wide array of different types of devices. So you don't have to go ahead and organically do that on your own from an ops perspective.
The situation is going to get worse before it gets better. The reality of this is that bad actors are doubling down in this space. If we're not, that never plays out well in our favor. And what we're going to have to do in order to have the impact that we need to is private and public sector are going to have to run at a similar pace.
Craig Herter asks, centrally managing all or most of your IoT devices, do you think we will ever get there?
Good security is hard. So I don't know if there's ever really going to be a utopia that we all want. But I think eventually there's going to be multiple things happening around legislations and all these things where it makes a lot of the things that we're talking about, it helps facilitate those to be achieved to a degree.
IoT devices are quite finicky. We've got to take a very different approach. The reality is we're not going to be able to patch everything. We need data. We need critical thinkers. We got to pair those two things together and come up with mitigation and remediation strategies. And we're going to be working at this for a while.
Researching behind the companies that produce these devices and services, the staff that they have to implement good security, it's not what it should be. And that is the root of the problem. Pressure in the environment from enterprises and CISOs on the call like this to those companies will start to make them head in a certain direction and resource the appropriate way. And
here is the bad idea. Never update IoT device firmware. Just replace with a new device, because new devices always have up-to-date firmware.
That will truly force me to optimize my monitoring strategy and my ability or my IR capabilities around responding to what is acting abnormally or maliciously.
Why worry about things in the past that are, getting old? Always be up to date with the newest capabilities.
Let Siri manage all your IoT device remediation and enable snarky mode.
I will not have to invest in new ops tools. It'll just be easy for my ops team to just talk to Siri. It'll be seamless. It'll get it done.
My team's morale will go up because, one, they like interacting with snarky individuals. They find it a challenge. It's enjoyable. They'll continue to enjoy those conversations. But beyond that, they can manage the ecosystem wherever they are using nothing but their voice.
Enterprises, the people that write the checks that these vendors want to sell things to, we become the department to know unless you start doing these things. And there has to be some end user CISO or designated consortium where they all agree to have the same demands.
The general hope is that, honestly, that people start just taking advantage of guidance that's already been established elsewhere. The hope would be, like we've seen to some extent with NIST 800-53, that folks use that as the foundation around the globe. and that standards are based around that. So what we might start to see are regulations and standards that are different, but still grounded in what NIST established. And that's still going to make it a much better place for all of us.
We got John, we got Craig here.
When you've got long-lived devices on the network, right, everybody is going to suspect that they're dangerous. So the quickest way to get people confident in the devices operating and operating securely is to make sure everybody knows they're new, they're brand new.
Well, I mean, anybody who's asked Siri to open the Bombay doors understands just how amazing Siri can be. Once you get into the remediation place, now you've got that snarky mode so that if somebody doesn't remediate, Siri's already riding their butt on getting it remediated.
Regulations aren't going to be a silver bullet by any means, but the good news is, and we see this a lot, the good news is there are a lot of devices being used by the federal government that are being used in commercial operations. They're literally talking about this. They're talking about the Energy Star-like logos that will start to be placed on devices to give you some faith that they have capabilities you would expect, that some level of hardening has occurred.
If you don't have a governance strategy, then a lot of things are probably ad hoc. Managing IoT devices and unmanaged devices in ad hoc manner, if you're an enterprise, you need repeatable scalability, predictability, and those things. But by doing that, you can kind of extricate what you know you don't do well or can't do well according to your governance, and you can start to separate it from there.
Look at yourself from the inside, look at yourself from the outside, and take advantage of free offerings that are available to you to do so, and then understand from there how much further you want to go. Just don't start with nothing, right? Don't make decisions as to your strategy without that visibility, because you're likely just going to end up revisiting that strategy.